Hello and welcome to the Common Creative Podcast. My name is Chris Meredith.
And my name is Paul Fairweather.
And we're on a mission to lift the lid on creativity at work and beyond. And we're both buzzing from having spoken to a very special guest.
Lewis Rossignol. Lewis is, I suppose he's an illustrator, for the want of a better word. But Chris left out a tagline, but Lewis is a poster boy for this thing about creativity through ideas, visual communication, and stories. And he's very funny to boot. So what we'd like you to do, we don't like people normally to, send them off. But if you look in the show notes, there'll be a link to Lewis's Instagram. Maybe go and have a look at that and then come back to listen to Lewis, because it'll make a lot more sense. Have a look at a couple of his reels. You can have a look at how to draw an Aussie if you're in Australia, or the one that we talk about, how to draw a Down syndrome person, which is, very poignant. So
to give you a clue, if you don't have time to check out Instagram, he's about to launch a program called How to Draw Like a Child. And there's a wonderful naivety, spontaneity, randomness to his work. So check it out.
Yeah, do check it out. Check it out and then come back and listen, because he has some amazing insights, stuff that I didn't expect to hear about his timing, his training, speed bumps in his life, and how, and his humor. So it's really well worth a listen, but have a look first. So Chris, let's get Lewis on.
Let's get him in and listen right to the end. There's insights and ideas throughout this show.
Lewis, welcome to the Common Creative Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great to have you on the show, Lewis. Delighted to have another visual artist to chat to.
Lewis, Chris and I are busting with questions, but before we do, for our listeners, can you give us a quick 60-second potted history about how you ended up where you are?
So I'm in my 40s. I've only really been doing visual art for a living for about 10 years. I did a lot of awful jobs that I hated, that I wasn't able to use any creativity in, waiting tables, doing some carpentry. And so I went back to school. I studied illustration, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew when I was a kid, I loved drawing. Why shouldn't I should have just continued that, but I stopped drawing for 15, 20 years. And then I picked it back up again, went back to school, and I just ran with it. I got on Instagram, I started posting things, and things started to just kind of snowball from there. And I've been able to make a really decent career because of basically Instagram and TikTok.
Wow. So this is probably getting to the end, but I love your reels. That's how I found you. And I was saying to Chris before, this is a rare payoff for my Instagram addiction, that I can actually get to speak to one of the creators that I find so fascinating. But how do you generate income from the work you do on Instagram and TikTok?
I sell prints of basically all the work that I do. And I sell originals. I have a ton of people now that I'm on a 6 to 8 month wait list for commission work. So people want me to draw their family or whatever. I've been doing album covers for some bigger artists. And they all, just like you both, they found me through Instagram Reels or Instagram scrolling. And now I've started teaching at the college that I went to, and I do online classes. So I have a lot of different baskets that I generate income for my art.
Now, Lewis, forgive me, because for people listening, they may be wondering what kind of work your illustrations are. And I read somewhere somebody described jittery and nervous line work. It evokes an artist a UK artist called Gerald Scarfe. I don't know if you've heard of him, an illustrator. And one thing that struck both Paul and I is you've got a reputation. You've in your past, you've done these incredible portraits, very, very expressive eyes. But now your style is much more, we'd call it random. There's a bit of chaos in there. But my question is, I have two questions. What do you think draws people to that slightly chaotic kind of figurative style? And also, why have you moved in that direction away from what most people would think of as a more realistic approach?
That's a good question. So I'll tell you why I love the style that I'm working in now is because when you look at children's art, there's just so much randomness to it. There's no planning. That they'll draw something and they'll realize they drew the person really close to the edge of the paper, and now there's no room for the arms, so they just put both the arms on the other side or whatever. You know what? They do random things, and it's so interesting to me. So I actually started to study children's art. I bought books about it, and I'm looking at it and trying to figure out, what are they thinking? So it just became like an obsession almost.
What's weird is the human brain goes, "Oh, I get that. That makes sense. Two arms on one side." It doesn't assault the brain. The human brain goes, "Yeah, I know what you mean." It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, nobody even seems to care. It's almost like, oh, whatever. We still know it's a human. You can really do a lot. You can exaggerate things and misproportion and put things where they don't go all over the place, and people still can read it as a person.
Mm.
And I love that, because then it gives the artist a ton of freedom. Whereas the style that I was working in, that you were talking about, it was a lot more, it was still jittery lines, but I was doing more portraiture work, and I wasn't exaggerating things as much. And it was fun, but it wasn't as fun as what I'm doing now. I'm having so much more fun now.
So, Lewis, on that, because on your reel, you do show some of your portrait work, which are sort of, I suppose, a little bit towards caricature. But I suppose people would say a better drawing, in the judgment of he can draw. I love on your feeds you feed up the negative comments that people put up there, and it adds to the amusement. I do have some questions about how you develop that style, but when you first did that, were you scared at all? Because you had that 20 years where you're doing drawing, you've gone back to college, you've learned to draw, and you can do a pretty good representation of someone that can recognize a person. Yet you put this other stuff out there, which is very childlike. Was there a moment of fear there where you went, "Oh my God, people are going to think I'm an idiot"?
No, because I don't think there was like a distinct line. Like, it wasn't like I was drawing in this style and then I'm just going to stop that altogether and draw in this style. I almost like slowly morphed into the other style and let, you know what I mean? So things got a little bit looser and a little bit more random, and I exaggerated things a bit more. And so it wasn't like I was just stopping one thing and I'm going to do something totally different and see how people like it. And I tend not to worry too much about how people like things, because I've always known that if I make something that I love, there's going to be other people that like it. It's just how the world is. There's so many people in the world. If I make something I love and I'm passionate about, people will connect to that.
That's fantastic. I was drawn to you, so to speak, a long time before you did the one about the Aussie. And when I saw that, I thought, oh well, I've got to reach out, being a Aussie myself, mate. Chris is actually a POM, but we're sort of honorary Australian now.
20 years. You're a Brit anyway. Yes. What honorary POM?
It's really interesting about life imitates art. I was really struck by a recent one you did about Down syndrome, and which is obviously maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit. But that night after I saw that, I went to give a presentation at a Rotary Club. And the waiter was a young man who had Down syndrome wearing an apron. And I can tell you that I have no recollection ever in my life of seeing, a young man Down syndrome with an apron. And I just it's like, wow, it's just amazing. And I had a cousin who was Down syndrome who was only supposed to live to 20 if he was lucky, but he lived to 50. And he was an absolute joy of a person. But I'm interested, in your, because I know you say that in your narration at the beginning that they're the few people that thought this was a good idea, or celebrate this idea. So yeah, do you want to talk about that one at all?
Sure, I will. And as you know, I do these, for people that don't know, I do videos that are like how to draw an Australian, how to draw a Scotsman, and I poke fun at people a little bit. I don't think they're mean-spirited or anything. They're pretty lighthearted. The one I did on Down syndrome, I don't feel like I made much humor in it, because I knew how sensitive people would be. And so the first thing I say in the video is, I'm going to draw them with a big smile, because they're happy being some of the only people that weren't immediately offended when I said that I was going to draw them. Because that's how it seems that the world is. And I felt like it was such a celebration of Down syndrome. That's how I felt putting it out in the world. And I still had some people that got offended because you just can't win on the internet.
Yeah.
But I have every person with Down syndrome that I know, they're just like, they bring you so much happiness when you're around them. It's just, there's just something about them that, you know, they have an outlook that's different than us. And I don't know, there's just something about every single person I know that has any type of mental disability. They usually are just a joy to be around. And so I was trying to capture that without being offensive. And like I said, still some people found it offensive.
So have you any tips on that, Lewis? Because you've got an incredible sequence of videos that I love the editing with the close-ups and your narration. And because what you're actually not describing how to draw these people. You're describing the features, the kind of personality of those kinds of people. And you see your hand moving to create shapes that, you know, that end up being a picture. And most people, if you said how to draw Chris Meredith or Lewis Rossignol, I'd be going, well, there's the hair on top, there's eyes, there's a face, there's a nose, which is definitely not how you're describing how to draw X, Y, and Z. Right. It's a way of training yourself to kind of think, what is the story I want to tell in this picture, rather than what does it physically look like?
Yeah, I usually think ahead of time of like, okay, what kind of things am I going to say with the piece? Like, for the Australian, I definitely knew I wanted to mention the fairy bread, because it was something that I had heard of, and I thought it was like kind of a ridiculous thing.
It is, yes.
Or Tim Tams, things that I knew about Australia. I know that most people view Australians as, you know, like the Crocodile Dundee type, because that's like the big movie that everybody thinks of when they think of Australia. So a lot of it is based on stereotypes, but I don't view the piece of art that I'm drawing as the piece of art. I view the video itself as the piece of art, because I know I'm gonna be combining it with narration, and like you said, I'm really not describing how to draw an Australian. I'm telling a joke, a minute-long joke about Australians, and the hook is how to draw an Australian. That's what I say in the beginning of the video, just to get people in. Yes. And they think they're gonna learn how to draw an Australian or whatever it is. But it really just kind of is a hook. And people like tutorials, and it's not a tutorial at all. It
could be more accurately called what Lewis thinks of Australians. Maybe that's kind of what it would really be called. But I love it, you know.
And not even really. I don't think that most of the things I said, I don't really think about Australians. I just know that they're things that people would think were amusing.
They're all true. They're all true, Lewis.
Yeah.
All true,
and I love Tim. I've actually had Tim Tams, and they're very good. So I understand why people like them.
Do you know the bit about how you drink them with the coffee? You know, you use them as a straw. So you cut either end and you suck through, and then it sort of just
coffee through the Tim Tam. Well, it sort of melts as you
suck the whole Tim Tam.
You can do that. I've never done that.
Only for a couple of minutes. Then
I'll be looking for one of how to drink coffee with a Tim Tam in the future.
I'm going to try that next time I get. You can't buy them around here, but sometimes, occasionally, they've fallen into my lap somehow. And have you ever had a penguin bar?
No. Oh, you bet.
That's a British treat, and I feel like the Tim Tam and the penguin are very similar.
You don't need to feel it. It's absolutely true. Many Australian brands are direct copies of things from overseas, and the Tim Tam was indeed a direct copy. And for what it's worth, the name came from Kit Kat Tim Tam. The biscuit came from the penguin. But anyway, a bit quick, but history there.
Lewis, I just wanted to go back a little bit, because you know, one of the things that both Chris and I teach in our thing, you know, about building people's creative confidence, is this whole thing of when people stop being artistically creative around puberty for various reasons. And drawing's one of the primeval one. You know, we all draw as kids. 99.9% of people who draw as kids. You're obviously good at it. Do you recall why you stopped? Was it someone that told you that you were no good, or was it just you got distracted with life, or you didn't think it was a real job? Like what was it? Do you recall?
Well, I definitely never really considered it that it could be a real job. I didn't. I live in Maine, which is like I lived in a small town. I don't know anybody that's a professional artist. I mean, I know that professional artists exist, but it seemed like, oh, you need to have connections or something. And when I grew up, there was no internet, so it wasn't like I was seeing all kinds of artists making a living on the internet. And so, yeah, I got married pretty young. I got married at like 21. And because of that, I just needed to find other jobs that took my time. And I just didn't have the time for art like that I wanted to. I probably stopped drawing because I took art all through high school. So I drew till I was about 17. And then I think after I got out of school, I probably didn't draw again for at least 15 years.
Wow, it's incredible. And do you remember the moment when you went, I'm going to go back to college and back to school and learn to draw?
Sure. I was actually, I had struggled with some substance abuse issues, and I finally got my life kind of back in order, and I was clean and sober. And I went back to school originally to become a substance abuse counselor. And that's what I was doing. And like the whole time I'm in school, I'm doodling on my notebooks, and I'm thinking like, oh, I don't think I want to talk about substance abuse for the rest of my life. Like, I just kind of want to like move on with it. And so after about a year of that school and drawing in my notebooks, I'm like, I think I should just switch over to art and do that, because that's what I really want to do. And so that's what I did.
Lewis, any tips for? I think there's a famous a Picasso quote about how he sort of peaked as an artist when he was about age 10, and he spent the rest of his life learning how to be a 10-year-old again. And I'm just wondering if you've got any tips for embracing that randomness and that chaos that you put on paper. Bearing in mind, we've all been trained to kind of look too closely and to try and be like a camera, I suppose, when we draw or paint. And that's what I think a lot of fear comes from. I can't draw like a camera, obviously, therefore my drawing's inadequate. So how do you embrace the inner random? The inner Lewis.
I think the best suggestion for that would be, don't look at photographs. Like if you want to draw something, just what would a child do? They wouldn't go and look up a picture of a horse or whatever. They just would draw a horse. They've seen a horse. They kind of know what they look like, right? And that's how we are. We know what these things look like. And if we go and look up a picture of a horse and we're trying to copy it, we're making art. I'm not saying it's not art, but it's not very creative, right? Because you're just drawing what you see. If you want to be creative, don't look at anything. Just draw from your mind, and then that's when you'll start really like coming up with your mind. Your mind is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more you're going to become creative.
I wonder if that's the fear, that by drawing in that way, you're revealing what's in your mind. And that's scary. I don't want people to know what's in there. But I don't myself want to know what's in there. So if I kind of draw what the camera would see, that's safer. Maybe that's, do you think there's something in that?
Yeah, that could be a thought for sure, where people are afraid to show others what's in their mind, or, you know, but if you really want to be creative, I feel like that's a good place to start.
It is. I was thinking about how I would draw Lewis Rossignol, and it struck me that actually it would be quite hard for me to do. I'm thinking in your style, and the reason is because I don't yet know what story I want to tell. And I could draw what you look like physically, but you know, is it a happy story? Is it a what is the story? Maybe that therefore I need to think about it before I can sort of put pen to paper. More I think about it, one thing struck me about your work is the way you combine media a bit, that it's pens, collage, ink, and so on, and that kind of freedom to just grab what feels like the nearest tool to put something on paper, and it just goes on, it comes together.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an important part of what I do, is using, like you said, I do want it to feel like I just grabbed the nearest tool, or the nearest color or whatever it was. And so before I start, I always lay out a ton of different stuff. Like you said, pens, crayons, some paints, some paint markers. And I try to vary it as much as possible, because...
So before you start, you've got this kind of palette of different things.
Yeah. And I do have certain colors that I tend to steer towards, and I try to like untrain myself because I want to be even more random than I'm being, so
Yes.
I'm always trying to figure that out. And it's fun to go into the art store and pick out, new tools. And I've never tried this. Let's see how it goes.
Have you ever, I'm very struck by this joke about your videos are instructions on how to draw something, but they're not. They're witty. They're an observation. I just feel like it's a big opportunity to do things like there's just been an election in the States. You can imagine a Lewis Rossignol drawing how to vote, and to hear your story about how to queue up or how to talk to other people in the line or whatever it might be. I think would really make things like that much more accessible. So have you ever done I'm sure people would figure in a drawing like that, but anything that's not just a kind of person?
I've done how to draw different animals, and I have a lot of landscape drawings that I've done. But I know what you're talking about, and I've done movie plots and things like that. I guess what you're talking about, like how to go grocery shopping or how to do this or how to whatever, that would be definitely a fun idea, and I'd have to really think about. That would take a special story to tell it in a way that made sense visually, but it could be very fun. So
because it's one of those things we all have loads of preconceptions, and if you say, well, the secret of supermarket shopping is the way you engage with the person at the checkout and the way you get drawn to the bargains that you shouldn't perhaps buy, maybe that's the story, or whatever it might be, and suddenly people see something routine or perhaps something scary in a much more accessible and fun kind of way.
Lewis, I had a question. Look, Chris and I, sort of our tagline for The Common Creative is, we're lifting the lid about creativity in life and business through the lens of ideas, stories, and visual communication or visual cognition. And you are, a poster boy for this. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is that, you said that you do these commissions, yet really you see your work now as the video, not necessarily the drawings. Yeah, look, so I'm interested. I'm assuming people commission those childlike drawings, not portraits now, given that the work that you do. Do you do a video for them, or so you do the commission of the drawing, but you see your artwork as the video, basically?
Well, yeah, the videos that we've been talking about, I see the video itself as but I do also make a lot of art that's not filmed, and the commissions I do are not really video based.
Right.
I have had people, like I did a piece of art for Brad Garrett, who's a comedian. He was on a show called Everybody Loves Raymond. I don't know if you got that show in Australia, but and I said to him, I really want to film this piece while I do it. So he's like, yeah, go ahead. I asked him if he was okay with me sharing it. So if they are okay with me filming it and making a video, I will. But I don't always. It just depends. I only have one. I have a guy that films me, and he only comes one day a week. So, and I draw way more than just one day a week. So I don't film everything I do. That's for sure.
Okay. So that was a question I had, whether you had someone to help you, because I'm probably partly inspired by you. I've been doing a watercolor, but it's not, I'm giving a story and a message, but it's not nowhere near what you're doing. But I just do it with my phone on a tripod. But yeah, okay. So how many do you post a week? You post one a week? Your drawings of your?
I try to post 2 to 3 a week, because when he comes, we film 3 or 4 drawings in like a 5 or 6 hour period. And then editing them takes, an hour or 2, and putting the audio. So it's a lot of work. But I try to do 2 to 3, and maybe only one of them I'll narrate. And the other one, I might just put some music over, and have it as a reply to a negative comment or something. So, because I just don't have the time to write like a audio narration, for all of them. It's just so time consuming. I'm sitting there. I'm like laying in bed at night, trying to think about like, how can I make fun of people from Boston or whatever, like things like, I'm only saying that because I just did a Boston one, which I'll probably put out in a week or something. But, that's what I'm doing.
And you're embracing the sort of negative feedback. You're almost laughing at the people who are commenting negatively. Is there a way? Again, kind of what's the how do you develop that mindset? Somebody says, "Well, that's rubbish. That doesn't look like that," or "That's not how people from Australia really are." Or whatever kind of negativity you're going to get, which you're going to get loads of online, which for most people would be crushing. Which means I'm not going to post online anymore, and you misunderstood me, and I hate you now. And all. How do you learn to embrace that? In fact, more than embrace it, I think you kind of. I'm guessing you sort of thrive on it.
I didn't get much negativity. At the beginning when I was posting online, and I because I was new to it and I had very few followers, and people kind of root for an underdog when you don't have a lot of followers and you're posting art. People are usually very kind to you and supportive. But the more followers you get, the more people stop they're not rooting for you anymore because you have a lot of followers. And so now they feel comfortable roasting you or telling you what they really think. So you get more trolls, but by that time it's like, well, people have been so supportive for a couple of years now, and I've been selling a ton of artwork. So okay, so some people don't like it. Who cares? If that was right from the beginning, it might have been a different story, But
is that a sign of success? You kind of need if art's not producing a reaction. I always say to people about my work is, I don't mind if you like it or hate it, but please don't tell me it's okay. That's the worst thing you can say about my work.
Yeah, that is a good point. At least it's drawing some type of reaction. If it's hate, it's hate. Hate's good, right? Because it's like you're saying, it's better than not caring at all. Like whatever.
Yeah.
I'd rather have them engage. The more that people engage with it, even if it's hate, then that just makes the algorithm love it and put it out to more people.
Famous quote from someone that there's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. Lewis, I just had a sort of question back to a broader thing. In the stuff that that I do and Chris does, we're teaching people, we're trying to get them to embrace creativity. I make a point that artistry is only a small part of creativity, yet it's a good stepping stone because the brain doesn't really know the difference, and so and it's a good way to practice. And you don't have to put in the public; you can practice in the privacy of your own home. Although I do workshops, I get people drawing, so it's done in public. But I'm really interested if you have any advice to people to I suppose there's two things. One is to go, well, my passion is really this, and I want to do this and make a career out of it, as you've done. Or, probably more realistic for majority of people is, well, get some creativity in your life because it'll just, make your life better, without judgment. So do you have any thoughts on that, or your own journey? Do you have to, do you have to end up with a substance problem, to become an artist? Or are there smoother paths you can take?
No, you don't, because like we talked about, the people at the age of 8, 10 years old, that's kind of when they peak as an artist, right? And they don't have substance abuse problems, hopefully. And so I do agree with you 100%, by the way. Like it's people should get creativity into their life if they don't have it in some way, right? Visual art is a great way to start. Like you said, your brain doesn't know the difference between if it's being creative, it's being creative, and it's great for your mental health. I find that, the days that I feel kind of depressed or down, if I start to draw and I create something, I just start feeling better. And the more you do it, the better you feel. It's a great productive thing to do. How to get it into your life? That's a great question. You have to make time for it. You have to be willing to fail, because when you're a creative person, you're gonna fail a lot. You're making things, you're being creative, you're creating things from nothing. And not everything that's ever been created from nothing is good. In fact, probably most of it's not good. And most of the art that I've done is probably not good. I just don't share all of that. But, you got to be willing to embrace that failure, because within that failure, you're going to find something more meaningful that can bring peace to your mind. And
the really interesting thing is, and I can't remember now, but I saw your videos before I saw your face, and so I only knew you by your voice, and I didn't quite know what to expect, and I was a little bit I don't know. I imagined something totally different, but of course now it's, I can't differentiate between them. But so it's really interesting, that perception. But look, the thing that I didn't, I sort of, the thing that I found today is this whole thing about your artwork as a complete package. You're not trying to, you just, as you say, you're telling a visual joke. In a way, which I think is fantastic. Did you always have that sense of humor? Have you done any stand-up at all in the past, or?
No, my wife says, you've been making me laugh for, 25 years. So she thinks it makes sense. And I never really put humor into my art until the last year. This last year I've really started like embracing the fact that I love comedy. I love humor. It's a big part of who I am. So why shouldn't I be using that in my art in some way? And I mean, visually, I'd have some humor and things in my art, but to like tell a story with my voice on top of the drawing, I did it like just on one video randomly, and it was like, I don't know, 5 million views or something. And I'm like, well, people seem to like connect with that. And I had a ton of fun doing it. So I'm going to keep doing it. And that's what I did. But I've never done like stand up or anything. And I don't think I'd be very good at stand up because, I don't think I'd be very good on stage. I think I'd have too much fright, whereas I can do it in my studio in front of nobody pretty easily.
There's a powerful message there, isn't there? Both Paul and I teach storytelling. And it's the image itself is only part of the art, that the story about how it was created and what was the intent of the person that created it is very much key to that. Yeah, I very much agree with what Paul's saying. It's the complete package. You're seeing the whole thing. And I'm sure when people buy your work, you're kind of equipping them with, oh, this is my connection with Lewis. This is my connection with this image. You're giving them the story that they can then tell their mates.
Yeah. And I will say, this is not much about creativity, but my sales on my prints have just quadrupled because people have a story behind the piece, and people love that. They like, I don't know what it is, but when people know like you're talking about the intent, right? I have a different intent now. I used to put out art and I wanted people to like it visually and think this is a great composition and there's great, focal point and contrast and the colors, and it was all visual. And now it's like, oh, my intent, I want them to laugh. It's a very different intent, and so I've noticed that people connect with the art so much more because of the intent is different. There's a story behind it. There's just more depth to it, which seems silly because it's like I'm making these stupid videos that are just like jokes and they're kind of ridiculous, but it gives the art more depth somehow.
Yeah. Look, I always found, because I'm a visual artist at times, I didn't paint for about 20 years as well because I was distracted with life. But, I found that, I was an architect. I knew a lot of people. And when I had my first exhibition, I sold out. I had a sellout rather than a sold out because people knew me, and there's that connection. And I used to make up funny titles, that's what, so mine was very sort of, a minute version of you. But the big thing was that if people knew me, they had a connection. So that I sort of understand that, and I think it's really interesting. And as you say, it's a silly drawing, but people get a, great connection because they resonated with the story. So yeah, it's fantastic.
It's funny because like I have I have a few stores that sell my art, and it sells okay in the shop, but it doesn't sell nearly as well as it does through my website because I'm not there to tell the story behind it. And so they're just seeing a piece of art, which is fine. And if they like the art, they buy it. But you're right. When you're there in person or, on video and you're telling a story, when people are connecting with you as an artist or as a creative, it makes a huge difference. And so I think people just want to connect with other people. And and it makes a big difference.
Lewis, I know you run on your website. You've got courses. You do an urban sketching one, a portrait one. Do you do the silly drawing one?
I'm actually filming one in February that is. It's not a silly drawing one, but it's going to be like how to draw like a kid, basically. And which seems kind of funny, because it's like, well, I already did that, but I feel like a lot of people are going to want to take it because it's like, yeah, you did do that, but can you do it now, or are you too in your own head? I'm going to have fun filming that and coming up with, I already have some of the course ideas, but I'm still working on it.
You need to sign me up, Lewis.
Yeah,
I need to be there. There's that famous, Chris alluded before, Picasso saying that he could draw like Rubin by the time he was 6, but it took him a lifetime to learn how to draw like a child.
Yeah.
So how to draw like a child. Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and as I said, this is an amazing payoff for me and for Chris, but to get some benefit out of our Instagram addiction by listening to you and to your insights. And I've got to say that I wasn't expecting to know that you only doing this took up drawing 10 years ago. I wasn't expecting to know that you've only been doing these humorous things for a year.
Yes.
And it's incredibly inspiring, Lewis. Look, they're entertaining. They're just absolutely fascinating. But your story in itself is inspiring, and I think your story, not only just the work that you do, will also inspire others to go, yeah, you know what, I can do this, or I'm not happy with this, I want to do this, so I just want to bring some creativity in my life. So I've been really, really grateful for you sharing your story.
Me too. I've learned about mental well-being. I've learned about human connection. I've learned about storytelling. I've learned about having a laugh. Fantastic set of insights from you, Lewis.
Right.
I really appreciate it.
So, Lewis, hopefully we'll get this on YouTube at some stage. I know that Chris has been, because he was practicing yesterday. So Chris, I think, has been doing a portrait in the Lewis style. So, Alice, Chris, are you going to show it?
Yeah, except my pen was, so you've got a big drip running across the page there as well. Nice. It was the headphones. This is what made me stop, because I thought I was drawing what I see, which is your headphones and your beard and so on. I still realized that I'm not drawing the story. I don't know what story to tell yet. And actually, the picture I now want to paint is about surrounded by all those tools, the ink, the pens, the brushes, the collage. That's what I would put around you, and it's not what I'm seeing, but it's what I know about.
That's it, right? If you weren't looking at me, how would you draw me? Like, you would just, who knows? But like you're talking about, now you know the story about how I have all those tools. So
yes,
it just makes such a big difference, and I bet you would like the result even more if you did a drawing like that.
I'm sure it would. And I'm sure it would be much more Lewis.
I'm going to add that as well. Now, Lewis, I always draw the people on our show, most of the times. And just so you know, so I can draw. This is what I did yesterday.
Oh, that's really good.
A guest, but I've had a bit of trouble with you, and I've done quite a few. Oh, no. Here's one that didn't work. Here's another one that didn't work.
Will you be doing these while we were talking?
Getting a little bit better. But this is sort
that's really good.
Getting there, I don't know, sort of going back the other way. So I haven't.
For people listening, we've now seen about half a dozen different sketches.
How did you draw that many in this quick a time?
I'm quick draw McGraw.
I wish I had known. I would have drawn you while I was talking.
Right. Well, listen, so we'll have to do it again, Lewis. We'll have to do it again. We'll have to do a draw up.
Draw.
But but interesting, my art teacher, because I have this really scratchy process, and he went, you can't draw that way, he tried to teach me a different way, and I still have his in my head going, no, draw a more continuous line. It's just incredible. I have, sometimes I draw better than other days, as you say, sometimes it fails, sometimes, it's a lot of mood and whatever. So, but I've really enjoyed it, and I feel quite honored that I've actually had the chance to draw you live.
I'm glad that you did too. I was really not expecting to see some art. It's funny when I see so many people drawing portraits of me now, and they send them to me, and I get like DMs of tattoos that people have got of my art, and
oh wow,
like dozens and dozens, and it's really interesting. Like, it's interesting to see how people draw me, but then it's also interesting to see how tattoo artists take my work and turn it into a tattoo, because my work is like, it doesn't feel like it would make a good tattoo because it's so like sketchy, and I don't know how they do it, but it's pretty cool. Some of them are better than others, but I've seen some do an amazing job.
Well, I could imagine that, maybe, some, tattoo artists, maybe in prison or something, who are trying to do a realistic drawing of you might end up with something that maybe looks like one of your drawings anyway.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, well, Lewis, look, I'd love to keep talking. I'd love to get online again and do a draw off, but thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you. And I'm personally inspired. You're inspiring, and as I said, your story and your work is both equally inspiring.
Absolutely, me too. Thank you so much, Lewis. Great pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you both for having me on.
So, Chris, look, again, what a fantastic conversation. I've said it numerous times, but for me, it's justified my hours and hours spending on Instagram Reels to be able to reach out to Lewis and to have him on the show. And actually, I just wanted to make a call out to our previous guests, because Lewis mentioned them, I think, after we turned the recording off. But I think it's the quality and diversity of our previous guests that convince new guests to come on our show, that they're Insights fans, that it's a bit of fun, and that they can share their insights. So I just wanted to, Chris, make a call out to all our previous guests that have shared their insights, because not only is it teaching Chris and I and our audience stuff, they're giving the confidence for our future guests. And
but I just want to add a thank you to you. You tracked Lewis down through the magic of the internet and Instagram, and what a great guest. I think you could tell that he was going to be such a powerful contributor to our show, and I'm so pleased that you did. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, look, the pleasures have been all mine. And what I like about him and the whole package, I loved his voice, and he didn't look like how I expected when I finally saw a picture of him. Although, now I can't imagine him any other way. But he is so softly spoken, and and he does, and it doesn't sort of come out. But we all have to find our medium, and his medium is this sort of visual comedy in a way, or visual that's funny storytelling, visual, and I just love the way that he's pulled these together, and they are so funny. And look, Chris, I think for all the learnings from the so many on this episode that I had was about this thing that he does these childlike drawings, and people want to buy them because they know the story behind them.
Yes,
and they can make that, and there's so much. In fact, I think we'll do a little snippet or a little conversation around that, because it's very much linked to that thing about Yuri Hasson. So stay tuned for a dissection of Lewis's work in the coming weeks. But
yes,
look, yes, it's been great. I can't, we're not supposed to have favourites, but it's certainly been one of my favourites.
Yeah, and please tell your friends. This would be a great show to tell your mates about, because there's so much good stuff about failure, about storytelling, about human connection. And for me, the big insight was when you draw, don't look, right, draw what inside you rather than what you see in front of you.
Yeah, and look, and give us a rating, but the rating's not for us, the rating's for Lewis, so maybe we're only worth 2 or 3 stars, but Lewis is definitely worth 5 or more stars.
5 or more.
So please, give a rating. I just want to apologize for my fingernails if you're watching this. I've been doing work in the garden and using ink, so my fingers are dirty. But anyway, so yeah, please and leave a comment for him, and check him out on Instagram if you haven't already.
And see you next week on the Common Creative Podcast.
Ciao.